Hello everybody, myself Dr. Raut SD and I am working as Assistant Professor in Department of Computer Science, School of Computer Sciences, Punyashlok Ahilyadevi Holkar, Solapur University, Solapur. Today I am going to have a kind of overview on the concept of basics of operating system. So, you see in a computer science, operating system is one of the key ingredient wherever we see as a computer science, where we will be having R&D. Basically, when we will be having a component as a part of software and hardware, we will be requiring a form of platform onto which all these particular softwares and hardwares are to be configured, all of the above. So, you just see what we will be having as an operating system is basically as an intermediary layer between the user of the computer system and the hardware platform. So, wherever the user want to have an interaction with the computer system, definitely he should be familiar with the concepts of operating system. So, when as an operating system we see, operating system is one of the thing as a story we can see where operating system is not being installed on the computer system. User, who will be the user? User will be as like the human beings, as like the other machines, or you can say in nowadays we can have AI bots also that will be acting as an user over there. So, all these users would not be able to have an interaction, or rather they won't be able to use any kind of software suites or software package unless and until the operating system is being firstly installed on the computer system. So, we need to consider that operating system will be the basic thing required in a computer system. If you are going to purchase a computer, nowadays we will be having a licensed version. They are being installed prior to what as in software you will be likely to look for in the computer system. So, if you are going to purchase any computing system either as a desktop or laptop, you will be having a basic form of its installation. Either the laptops are being installed with the Mac, you can say operating system. We may be having Macintosh as an abbreviated as a Mac operating system. If you will be looking for a desktop, we will be having Windows 10, Windows 7. They are the pre-installed versions of the operating system. So, operating system is basically a software suite you can consider, where we will be having software, as you may be having learned this particular form of software that comes in your earlier studies, may be referred to the application software and the system software. So, application softwares are to be installed on this particular operating system, and that is why you can say operating system will be stand itself as a, you can say, system software. So, system software where we will be having the computer languages, we will be having this operating system will be the constituent of that particular system software. So, when you consider as an application software is basically a software which will provide a particular application based service to the users or to the mankind, to be termed as an application softwares. System softwares are the softwares which are being tied up with the hardware configuration, or that are being installed on the bare hardware, and that will be giving as an environment or a sort of configuration setup where all these application softwares are to be executed on. So, operating system will be termed as a system software, where we will be installing all the application softwares, and operating system will provide a kind of nutshell or an environment onto which all these particular you can say application softwares are to be installed and they are to be used by the users. So, basically when we will consider the definition aspects of having basics of operating system, the first definition which will come prior to what as an operating system we are going to see is operating system is basically a system software that will give a kind of environment to the all the related application softwares where they could be installed and executed based on what sort of operating system we may be having. So, one of the important aspect that comes upon what as in system software as an operating system we will be installing or we will be using over there is a kind of interface. So, you see now as a computer generation that has got evolved from earlier days to now at present, we will be having different modes of user interfaces. User interface is where a kind of convention that will be used in between the user and the computer system, where how user is going to give an instruction, how the user is going to put his address, or how the user is going to put his command, where that will be executed by the machine over there. So, operating system will be responsible to look after whatever the instructions that are being given by the user are to be executed in a specific manner or in a standardized manner where what user is expecting. So, have you seen any operating system as a way that you are going to provide a command or instruction just to make a copy of the file and it is deleting the file from the system? No. So, you just see whatever the commands as an instruction the user is going to giving over there, as the user is going to submit over there, that will be strictly followed as per what the English language literature meaning that we have tied and assigned to that particular action and instruction. So, you can see one of the important aspect prior to what as an user interface that will be guaranteed through the use of operating system is looking after for what as a best and good command interpretation. So, operating system will be acting as a good command interpreter. So, whatever the command and instructions that the user is going to submit over there, user is going to write over there in the form of codes and source codes. So, that will be executed in a manner that what the user is intended to have that particular thing to be guaranteed and executed by the computer system. So, command that will be given to the operating system will convert that command which in the form that the machine will understand, and actually that particular command will be executed by the machine over there. So, machine will be not able to understand the higher language command, higher language instruction that has been given by the user, rather it will be understanding the code in the form of having binary bits, a stream of zeros and ones are there, and based on that the command will be executed with respect to having some specific meaning. You may have heard about the ASCII, that is American Standard Code for Information Interchange. So, every alphabet, whatever the keys we may be having in the keyboard, has been given a unique identification number, that is the code we will be following over there, and with respect to that the operating system is responsible to make a kind of implication with respect to what as an code, as an instruction, as an key that has been pressed by the user. So, prior to user interface, our basic thing is to understand how the operating system is a good command interpreter. So, operating system is a good command interpreter, basically what as an instruction that the user is submitting over there with respect to what the action that has been carried by the, you can say, computing system over there. So, you see in earlier days the user interface was there through the commands. So, we call that particular interface as a command line interface, and nowadays as an interface we are practicing with having the drags and drops, the folders, and the convenient way to have the user interface is basically that we are practicing nowadays is a graphical user interface. So, command line interface was an earlier day scenario where user is there, he will be having a catalog of commands, maybe in the form of internal commands or maybe in the form of external commands. He will be writing a code in the form of what the command that has to be given to the operating system, maybe by the way of having scripts or by the way of having some sort of you can say programs where all these sets of instructions may be combined in a, you can say, one particular form of file. So, you see what as an files may be having all these interpretations related to the user interface with respect to having either of command line interface or say graphical user interface, that has to be guaranteed through the way of what the operating system that has been installed over there. So, in earlier days we may be having you can say Microsoft disk operating system with respect to what is the basic form of operating system where we may be having all the commands to be given and the commands will be executed by the system. Later on that command line interface has been evolved with respect to having a graphical user interface, and that has brought by the Microsoft, either of having the versions of Microsoft 95, Microsoft 2000, 2007, and nowadays we may be having, you can say, Windows with respect to Windows 7, Windows 10. Okay, recent versions of operating systems are being evolved over there. Prior to this particular standalone operating system or the operating systems that are being installed onto the standalone systems, we may be having some of the operating systems that are to be operated in the network environment. So, you will be having operating systems related to the you can say distributed operating system, may be having parallel computing operating system, may be having an operating system related to the cluster systems, or those are the operating systems which are operating in a network environment. We will be calling them as a network operating system. Just like Unix was there, where we will be having multi-user, multitask operating system. So, you see these user interfaces along with what the you can say compatibility that is going to be provided by the computing systems are to be related with what the user is there, how many type of users are there, whether it is a single user or whether it is a multi-user environment, whether the computing system is intended to perform one particular task at a time, or whether it will be allowed to have multiple tasks at a time. So, based on that, as the computer generations are being evolved, we may be having different forms of operating systems. So, these you can say operating systems could be grouped under 4 different categories. We can say those are the operating systems which is going to execute one particular task at a time. So, it will be called as a single user operating system, having one user in consideration and it is going to perform one particular task. So, single user single task operating system. If we will be having single user and the computing system will be able to perform multiple tasks, so you can say it is a single user multitask operating system. If we will be having you can say multi user and they will be focusing on one particular task in a group environment to be handled, to be tackled, to be you can say operated in multi user environment, we can call them as a type of operating system where we will be having multi user single task operating system. Or different types of users are there and they are going to have different you can say types of tasks with respect to having different time scenarios and considerations. So, we can call them as a group of operating system where we may be having multi user multitask operating system. So, you see what as an consideration overall we can have for a definition of operating system. As I told you that we may define operating system as being the system software. We may define operating system as being the environment that it is going to provide to the rest of the application software that are to be installed, configured onto the system software. It is acting as a good command interpreter. So, whatever the command that is given by the user, they will be executed in what the command that has been entered in what form, basically the related actions will be carried by the operating system. And one more thing, I told you that we may be having in some code convergence systems that will be handled practiced by the operating system. So, you can see it is just like what as an intermediate between the user and the computer system. So, I have just justified the you can say a term where we can say it will be acting, means operating system is just acting as an intermediary between the computer system and the user. So, you can take this in another way. Just like we will be having some local mother language, we may be having some foreign language. So, if a foreigner come to visit our country, basically he is from Italy and he needs to buy something from the local market of Solapur. So, what he will be doing? He do not know the Marathi, rather he do not know any you can say local language, he only knows the English language or it is basically an Italian language. So, what he will do? He will hire a kind of tourist guide who will be knowing you can say the language which is being spoken in the local market, as a you can say local person will be able to understand, will be able to make some sort of communication with respect to the you can say shopkeeper or maybe the seller, and he will be going to translate the particular what as an price amount or what as an you can say the product that is being sold by that particular you can say shopkeeper to that particular foreigner. So, he is one as a tourist guide will be knowing both the local language as well as the foreign language. So, in similar fashion we will be having operating system which will know the higher level language and also it will know the lower level language. So, the sort of communication that will be you can say governed by the computing system, it is playing an important role as a good communicator. So, as along with having a good command interpretation, it is also working will be acting in the form of communicator. So, the communication between the user and the computer system will be carried through that particular operating system environment. Beside this, when we look for the hardware configuration of the computing system, where we may be having a central processing in it, we may be having a memory, we may be having some file systems, we may be having some IO related operations. So, all these resources with respect to what the user is intended to have, either of having the CPU bound process, either of having the IO bound process. So, that will be as in resource allocation, resource deallocation, how many resources that are there in the system, how many users are there, can we make a demand and supply, what is the user demand, what is the process that is in execution demanding for what type of page, what type of source of information, that all overall interrogation, exchange of information between the user and the system will be guaranteed, will be worked out to that particular operating system. So, you see what are the key terms and definitions we have gone through as a part of having operating system as in basics of operating systems in consideration. We have seen operating system is intermediary between the user and the computer system. Operating system is a basic system software which will give an environment to all the, you can say, related application software to get it installed and to have the related execution as per the user demand, user request. We have seen operating system is acting as a good command interpreter. Whatever the instruction that has been given by the user will be executed in a manner what it is intended for. We have seen operating system is a command interpreter. Beside with command interpreter, it is a good communicator. Whatever the higher languages are there are to be addressed with the help of having operating system. Whatever the instructions that are given in the higher level language are to be, you can say, given back to that particular machine in the form of lower languages, where we may be having some mnemonic, we may be having some machine language related instructions, maybe as in form of having, you can say, source of information that are to be transferred from the user to the machine, or after processing back from the machine to the user over there. And just now what I narrated to you is that operating system will be working as the resource allocator. Whatever the resources that are there, maybe in the form of hardware resources, maybe in the form of software resources, what the user is intended to use for it will be guaranteed, will be governed, will be addressed with respect to having a resource allocation graph, maybe having some sort of strategy to look for how many resources that are there in the system. Can we satisfy that particular resources out of what the number of users that are demanding for it, requesting for it. So, keeping all this thing and not to get trap our system in the form of having deadlock, where none of the resource will be utilized, rather will be having some of the resource that will be held by some of the process in the system. So, keeping an eye onto the smooth execution of the computing system is an overall responsibility of the operating system. So, this is what I want to make you explain. Beside of having the term, in this particular video we will be able to understand the two different meaning for what as a word will be having. Two different words are there, one is operating, another one is a system. So, the system that will be operated through an environment is nothing but the operating system. So, beside this also I told you that we will be having different types of user and the type of task that will be executed by the system. So, we have four types of you can say operating system categorization, whether it is a single user single task, whether it is a single user multitask, whether it is a multi user single task, or we may be having multi user multitask. So, this is what is a basic of operating system. Related illustration for the, you can say, what are the roles and responsibilities, what are the types of operating system, that we will see in the next video. Thank you very much.